This is Plant-Based Briefing, 8 Advances of Animal Agriculture That Backfired, Part 1 by Jordi Casamitjana at VeganFTA.com. And I'm Marian Erickson. This is the Plant-Based Podcast where I curate a variety of articles on plant-based and vegan living, get permission, and narrate them to you here in about 10 minutes or less every weekday. This article would have been longer than that, so it's a two-parter. This is Part 1, and tune back in tomorrow for the second half. And now let's get to today's Plant-Based Briefing. 8 Advances of Animal Agriculture That Backfired, Part 1 by Jordi Casamitjana at VeganFTA.com. The animal agriculture industry has been reinventing itself over the centuries, but some of the advances it created through its research and innovation side eventually backfired. Animal agriculture is a big industrial sector that, like all industries in our economic system, aims to produce as much profit as possible. As such, it constantly tries to produce more animal products to sell, like meat, eggs, dairy, wool, silk, leather, etc., reducing as much as possible the cost to produce them and making them more appealing to potential customers. Therefore, this industry has a research and development dimension that has been looking at new ways to achieve that since the agricultural revolution started centuries ago. Now and then, the efforts of the industry research produces breakthroughs that are seen by the industry and politicians as landmark improvements. However, are they really? It depends on the negative side effects they may cause. In many cases, an improvement in one area causes a worsening in another. If those aspects that worsen from the innovation are external to the industry, animal agriculture may not care that much and may continue developing the new practice if it gives them higher profits. However, on some occasions, the negative side effects revert back to the industry, which needs to invest more to mitigate them, to hide them, or to appease the external forces that criticize them to such an extent that their reputation may be negatively affected and their growth consequentially curtailed. In other words, the advances may at one point backfire, and what initially was perceived as an improvement eventually loses its shine and can even be considered a problem that can lead to existential consequences for the industry. The following are some examples of this. 1. Artificial selection. Artificial selection, the deliberate breeding of animals to enhance desirable traits, started with the dawn of agriculture, but was systematized at an industrial scale in the 18th and 19th centuries. Pioneers like Robert Bakewell developed selective breeding methods for sheep and cows, producing animals that grew faster, yielded more meat, or produced more wool. In the 20th century, the U.S. chicken industry refined this further, creating the modern broiler chicken, a bird designed by breeders to reach slaughter weight in just 5 to 7 weeks instead of several months. What was hailed as agricultural progress soon became a welfare disaster. Breeding for extreme characteristics created animals whose bodies could not cope with their own physiology. Modern broiler chickens, whose breast muscles have been selectively enlarged, now suffer chronic pain, skeletal deformities, and heart failure because their organs and bones cannot support their rapid growth. Up to 30% of broilers have difficulty walking, some collapse under their own weight. Turkeys bred for large breast meat can no longer reproduce naturally, and nearly all industrial turkeys are produced through artificial insemination. Dairy cows bred to produce more than 10,000 liters of milk per year routinely suffer mastitis, lameness, and reproductive disorders. Pigs bred for larger litters produce more stillborn and malnourished piglets. The advance of selective breeding created animals that, although initially hailed for being highly profitable, turned out to be physiologically unstable. Living beings designed like biological machines, breaking down under the pressure of their own exaggerated traits. Consumers who initially were happy to buy the flesh of these animals now begin to feel uncomfortable about it, even using negative labels such as Frankenchicken. 2. Feeding grains to pigs and cows. The shift from pasture-based feeding to grain-based intensive feeding accelerated after World War II, when the Green Revolution produced abundant, cheap crops like soy and maize. The shift, adopted heavily in the U.S., Europe, and later China, allowed farmers to fatten animals more quickly and cheaply. Feedlots, industrial yards where cows are fed grain instead of grass, became widespread in the 1970s. However, grains require vast land and resources. As global demand for cheap feed grew, countries turned to the Amazon basin, especially Brazil, to produce enormous quantities of soybeans. Today, around 80% of the world's soy is fed to farmed animals. The result has been devastating. The Amazon, once called the lungs of the planet, has been cleared at alarming rates to make way for soy plantations and cow ranches. Over 17% of the rainforest has already been destroyed, with animal agriculture driving up to 91% of Amazon deforestation. In 2022 alone, Amazon deforestation reached its highest point in 15 years, largely due to land clearing for cows and feed crops. Beyond biodiversity loss, deforestation disrupts the Earth's climate. Rainforest destruction contributes billions of tons of CO2 annually, pushing the Amazon dangerously close to a tipping point where it could shift from rainforest to dry savanna. What began as a way to boost productivity has become a global environmental crisis. 3. Factory farming. The industrialization of animal farming, or factory farming, accelerated after the 1950s in the U.S. and Europe. The shift to concentrated animal feeding operations, or CAFOs, was framed as efficient, modern, and necessary to feed the world. However, as billions of animals were confined in crowded warehouses, disease risk exploded. When tens of thousands of genetically similar animals live beak to beak or snout to snout, pathogens spread with deadly efficiency. Factory farms have since become breeding grounds for zoonotic diseases. Avian flu is the most alarming example. Highly pathogenic strains such as H5N1 and H7N9 have repeatedly emerged from industrial bird farms. In 2022 to 24, H5N1 caused the largest global bird flu outbreak in history, killing over 500 million birds, mostly culled, and jumping to mammals, including humans. The WHO warns that H5N1 has a 50% human fatality rate in known cases. Industrial pig farms have produced swine-origin influenza strains, including the 2009 H1N1 pandemic, which infected 1.4 billion people. Meanwhile, overcrowded fish farms spread parasites and viruses that then infect wild fishes. We use the term fishes rather than fish, as I write in veganized language linked here. The advance of factory farming has created an ongoing public health time bomb, with places so densely packed with stressed animals that viruses evolve rapidly, potentially producing the next global pandemic. You just listened to 8 Advances of Animal Agriculture That Backfired, Part 1 by Jordi Casamitjana at VeganFTA.com. And I'm Marian Erickson, your host. Tune in tomorrow for the second half, where you'll hear about curated ultra-processed meat, sheeps with extra long hair, mega dairy farms, aquaculture, and use of antibiotics to aid growth. So please share this episode with anyone who might benefit, and thanks for listening.